Hi folks, today we're going to be taking a look at SOLIDWORKS 2012-2013 in the creation of a chisel from one of their canned tutorials. So the first thing you need to do is go ahead and launch SOLIDWORKS, and once you've launched SOLIDWORKS, if your screen appears like this, we're going to hit the Home tab for Resources, click on Tutorials. I'm going to click on All SOLIDWORKS Tutorials for the set 1. And I'm going to click on Lofts. Now, the Loft feature differs from any other feature that we've taken a look at for a couple different reasons. We started with the simple extrusions of the Boss base, and we moved into some of our Revolve features. The Revolve feature is similar to the Loft feature in the sense that we had one sketch that we worked off of, and there was material filled from that sketch. So the Loft feature is dissimilar to the Revolve feature in the sense that there's multiple sketches, but the computer will fill material between the sketches, which you will see. So we're going to go ahead and click on the tutorial, and this is the finished part that we're going to create at the end of this tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Next. And it's asking me to go ahead and create a new document. So I'm going to say File, New, and I'll create a part. Okay. And once this opens, you see we're going to be dealing right away with a series of planes. So what I'm going to do is select on the front plane, and I'm going to right click on my front plane and tell it to show this front plane. So that front plane will stay selected. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is select a reference plane, all right, out of the reference geometry. So I'll go to my Features tab, and here's reference geometry. So I'm going to click on my reference geometry and come down to plane. When I click on that, you'll see that this pops up asking me what I want to reference. The first reference is going to be my front plane. So I'll click that, and it will reference that plane, and it's asking for a distance of how far off I want to set that. If you notice, our distance is going to be 25 millimeters, so we're going to hit 25, and I can check that off. You'll notice what we've done is we've created a plane that is directly parallel to our front plane. So we have made a plane that is 25 millimeters off the front plane. This tool can be very useful for when you're constructing many other things in SOLIDWORKS. It does not have to relate to lofts. However, we will be using this in the loft tool as well. Okay, so I'm going to select my plane 1. With plane 1 selected, I will select it, and I'm going to reference geometry and reference another plane. Okay. Once again, this one will be 25 millimeters, so I'll say good. Once plane 3 is selected, you'll notice the numbering is slightly off, plane 1, plane 2. Our front plane is still called front, so although we have 3 planes, it goes front 1, 2. Okay, so I'm going to select my second reference plane, and I will say reference geometry plane, and this time we're going a distance of 40 millimeters. So I'll enter 40 and check that off. Okay, now if you rotate this around, you should notice you'll have 3 planes spaced at 25, 25, and then your third one is spaced off at 40. So with the front plane selected, this is where it gets hairy. We have 4 planes here, and if you look directly at the front, it's hard to see which plane you're drawing on because they're all stacked on top. The easiest way that I can find which plane you're on is wherever your origin shows is the plane you're sketching on. So if I want to work on my front plane, I'm going to select my front plane, and I'm going to say Sketch, Sketch. Now, you'll notice it squares me up to that, and it's hard to tell once again where that origin is located. But if I rotate this around, you can see that origin is on my front plane. So if your origin's up here, you've selected the wrong plane. So although I spacebar look from the front and draw a rectangle that appears to be on any one of those planes, it will draw on the front plane because of that origin. So I'm going to go ahead and dimension that as shown in the tutorial. We're at 60 millimeters wide, 60 millimeters tall, and they want us to space it 30 and 30 from the origin. I've already done that just by the nature of a center rectangle or center square. If you had done a corner rectangle, you'd have to dimension it 30 and 30. I can prove that by showing you here. We are already at 30. All right, so I'll hit next. And on sketch plane 1, we're going to draw a circle. So I'm going to finish this sketch, and that's important. Finish it. I'm going to come over to sketch plane 1, select it, okay, and now I'm going to say sketch on that plane. Once again, you see the origin moves to that, and that's critical. So now I can look from the front, and I'm going to sketch a circle with a diameter of 50 millimeters. All right, so I can finish that up. Exit the sketch, good. Now on plane 2, plane 2, we can say sketch. I will normal to or front view, and we're going to create a center circle that is, the radius is hitting this point. All right, as shown here, it should be 42.43, which it is. So I can place that, exit my sketch, and move on. It's asking us to look at this isometrically, so I'll go ahead and spacebar isometric just to show you what we've created so far. And we're going to select sketch 3 and copy that stuff onto plane 3. So we have 2 circles. Whether you want to copy it or simply draw another circle is up to you. In my particular case, I don't see the need to copy it when we can simply sketch another circle that is of the same size. Okay, so you should have something that resembles this. 2 sketches, a small sketch, 2 circles, smaller circle, and the smaller rectangle. Now, we're going to move on to the lofted boss base. The way lofted boss base works is it takes the sketches and fills material between them. It also relies upon the other sketches to determine the profile of the sketches further down. So what I'll do is I'll do a quick loft and you'll see what I'm talking about. So if I select loft, it's looking for profiles. So what we're going to do is enter these 4 profiles into this box. So I'm going to say this is one profile, sketch 4. This is another profile. This is another profile. And this is another profile. Now, you'll notice when we loft, it places these green dots. These green dots are almost like the backbone to our loft. Okay? You can think about right now, if we were to look at this from the, let's say, right side, okay, you want these following in a even path. Our sketches are going to come in, so they're going to differ in that sense. But if I were to change this to something like that, you'll see how the material becomes twisted. Okay, this could become very usable for abstract art, pottery, anything of those natures. But in our particular case, we're trying to keep these circles all in a line. So I'm going to slide these green circles back until they line up again, like so. All right, that's to keep everything nice and true. So go ahead and hit next. I'm going to say yes, and you'll see we've created this actual part thus far. All right. There's our solid model. Good. The next step is we are creating another plane that is 200 millimeters from the back. So we should have something that looks like this off this plane. So I'm going to select my front. I'm going to say reference geometry plane, and I'm going to draw it 200 millimeters in this direction. Okay, so I'll select that. I'm going to go back for my dimensions here, and I can normal to that plane. Let's see here, back here, to start sketching this. And we can look through this too, that's fine. We're on that plane behind it. So I'm going to take a center rectangle and place it right on my origin and get this drawn out there. Now you'll notice it looks like I'm drawing at the front, but I've selected this plane in the back, so I'm actually working very 200 millimeters behind this. Okay, so it's critical to keep our planes in mind here. So I can go ahead and get this dimensioned at 150 millimeters, and 5 millimeters in our thickness, and they're asking for 75 and 0.25. Excuse me, 2.5. Once again, because of using the center rectangle, that stuff is already defined. So I can check that off, and we'll go back to the step where we're going to, excuse me, we'll go forward to where we're going to actually get this part lofted. All right, so I'm going to select my loft, boss base, and I'm going to use this profile. Oops, let's get rid of those edges. Let's use the face. This face and this profile. All right, now you'll see that goes from this face back to our 150 by 5 millimeter rectangle. Problem being that these little green dots are not aligned. Our little backbone's not aligned. So I'll slide this down to align that, and you'll see that creates the material in between. Hit next. All right, and we have the solid model. So if you remember from our original picture that I showed you of this object, this has a little bend in it. All right, so instead of drawing it with the bend, what we're going to do is actually draw it as a solid like we've done, and then use the flex tool to go ahead and bend this. If your flex tool isn't showing, the easiest way I can tell you is to click on this tutorial, click flex, and that will pop up the flex tool for you. Otherwise, we have to go into our toolbars and actually turn it on. So if you click on this, that will pop this toolbar up, and you can use the flex tool. So we'll click on the flex tool, all right, and we're going to input some data here. So the bodies that we're going to flex, like I said, we always work from the top down. The body that we're going to flex is this. That's our body, okay? What that does is place this little triad in here. It gives us some trim planes, okay, that we can move around, and we can also move this triad on this axis, okay? Basically, the axis you can think about is defining where we're bending, the trim planes being how far or where that trimming is going to stop. So our trim plane 1 stays where it's at. Our trim plane 2 gets moved to this section right here. So I'm going to come to my trim plane 2, and I'm going to say we want to align it to this point. So I just click on that. It gives us the vertex, and it moves that trim plane. What we're now going to do is zoom out, and I'm going to look at this from the right side. All right, and what we're going to do is grab this trim plane. See, I get that little red arrow? When I pull down on that red arrow, only the material between the trim plane should flex and bend. That's what the trim plane does. This is going to move as a function of this flexing slightly, but only this material is flexing. This is not flexing. This is a solid axis through here. All right, so bend this part down. I don't think they give us a distance of how far we want to bend it. We're just simply pulling it. Wait for our red arrow. There it is. Just simply pulling that until it looks halfway decent, and we can check that off. And you see that it creates the flex tool. All right, so that concludes the quick tutorial for how we can flex this part.